What is up, guys? We are back again today with another video. However, today in this video, we're gonna be doing something that is very different than from what I usually do on my YouTube channel. For today's video, guys, I am gonna be making a tier list. Yes, you heard me right. We are making a tier list. A, B, C, D type stuff. You know what I mean? But for today's video, guys, I am gonna be making a tier list of the NFL. For those of you who don't know, I am a big NFL fan, primarily the Seahawks. That's my number one team. I am from Washington State, so that is my team. So, without further ado, guys, today we're going to be making a NFL tiers list, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Alrighty, as you guys can see here, we have our tiers. We have Super Bowl favorites, Super Bowl contenders, playoff teams, potential wild cards, missing playoff teams, mediocre at best, young but intriguing, and number one pick contention. So let's go ahead and start off this tier list. The number one team we got right here is the Saints. Now, if you guys remember, in the offseason, the Saints picked up Derek Carr, which I do think was an upgrade over who they had, which was, Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, and whatnot. So starting off with these Saints, I am going to say I think they could win their division because their defense is good enough, but I don't know if they're one of those teams that could just make a deep push in the playoffs. So I'm not exactly sure. I think their potential wild card, I'll put them there. I think that's a good place for them. After we kind of put some more teams on here, I'll kind of see where they stack up with the rest of these teams, and we might adjust them according to whatever other team is looking like. But for now, we're going to put the Saints at potential wild cards. All right. Next team on the list, we have the Miami Dolphins. And I think the Miami Dolphins are actually a pretty intriguing team. I think the number one question when it comes to the Miami Dolphins that everyone looks at is Tua Tagovailoa. I think I said that name right. We'll just call him Tua. You know what it is. He's got to stay healthy, though. You know what I mean? That whole team is based around whether or not Tua can stay healthy. But with that being said, with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle, with the whole rest of that team, the defense is looking good. They picked up Jalen Ramsey, which I think was really good for them. I think their team actually looks really good. They are in a tough division. However, I think that they can still get things done in the AFC, and I think that they are a really good contender. So we're going to go ahead and put them in playoff team. I think that's a good spot for them. I definitely can see them making the playoffs very easily. And if everything goes according to plan for them, I think they could easily go and be Super Bowl contenders. But for now, we're going to leave them as a playoff team. So, alrighty, with the next team here, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I actually really like the Baltimore Ravens as far as like a lot of the pieces they have. I think Lamar Jackson is actually a very good player. I mean, obviously he can run the ball, but I think each year he gets better and better at passing the ball. They added Odell Beckham Jr., they drafted a wide receiver, they already had Bateman. I think overall the Ravens have a very good team. I like their coach a lot. John Harbaugh is a very good coach. And I think overall they just have a very winning culture and with all the pieces they have in the history. And so with that being said, I wouldn't put them though necessarily above the Bengals because, the Bengals are in their division and I think the Bengals are a step ahead of them. They're a level above them. So with that being said, I'm going to put the Ravens as potential wild cards. And I think they are a very high chance that they make the wild card and that they make the playoffs. But like I said, I can't put them at above the Bengals. And so with that being said, we're gonna leave them over here in potential wild cards. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next team. We have the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually love the Cincinnati Bengals. I love Joe Burrow. I love everything that he brings to that team. He's just, calm, steady, collective, and he can just handle all the big moments, like I've always loved Joe Burrow. As soon as he got into the league, I thought he was going to have, a lot of, success in the league. And so with that being said, I think with him, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, their offensive line got a lot better. So I think they'll be able to protect Joe Burrow very well. I think that makes them a very high chance of having, success in the NFL. And they're just a winning team now since they've gotten Joe Burrow. And I think that defense is very underrated. They have a pretty good D line. I do know that I'm pretty sure that they lost their safety, though. Jesse Bates, if I remember correctly. I think he went to the Falcons. So I think that hurts their defense a little bit. But nonetheless, with Joe Burrow on that offense, I still see them as being Super Bowl contenders. I mean, they are in the AFC, which is a very tough conference, with the Bills, the Chiefs. I mean, you got the Dolphins, like I said earlier, and, a whole plethora of other teams in the AFC that do make it a little bit more challenging. But nonetheless, the past couple years have shown me that with Joe Burrow, that this team is a Super Bowl contender. So I'm going to leave them up there as our first Super Bowl contender team. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next team. Alrighty, and with our next pick on this list, we have the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos with Russell Wilson had a terrible year last year. Like, when I say terrible, I mean absolutely like the worst year that you could have, especially when everyone was like, oh, we got Russell Wilson now. The Denver Broncos, all they were missing was a quarterback, and they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. And then nothing. This absolute crap. So I don't think that necessarily had everything to do with Russell Wilson. I mean, being that I was a Seahawks fan, I've gotten to see Russell Wilson, firsthand, watched a lot of his games. But when he left my Seahawks and went to the Broncos, I'm not gonna lie, he left with a sour taste in my mouth, and I honestly was hoping that he wasn't gonna have success with the Broncos, and sure enough, he didn't. But with that being said, I think a lot of that had to do with Nathaniel Hackett, their head coach. I think there's a reason why he got fired. But now with them having Sean Payton, I do think that they're going to, not be as bad as they were the previous season, and that they'll take kind of a step up. But with that also being said, they're in a very tough division, not only with just the Chiefs, but the Chargers. And I don't think the Raiders are as bad as everyone says they are. I think they have a lot of good pieces on the Raiders. But for now, speaking with the Broncos, I just don't see them being a team that can just get into the playoffs and just, make a deep run in the playoffs. I think that they could be a potential wild card. However, like I said, I think the AFC is so stacked. I just think that there's other teams that will take those wild card spots over them. So if I'm being honest with you guys, I really see them being a team that misses the playoffs, but not by much. I don't see them missing the playoffs by much. I see them being a team that goes around 500. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games. However, I think a lot of those close games that they're going to lose, and they're going to beat the bad teams, but I don't think necessarily they're going to be able to hang with the good teams this next year. So with all that being said, Sean Payton is going to take them up to the next level, just one more level up above where they were last year, but they had a pretty bad year last year, so that's not really saying a whole lot. So with that being said, I'm going to have them at missing playoffs, but just barely, all right? Just barely, all right? So, with that being said, our next team on the list is the New York Giants. And the New York Giants surprisingly actually made the playoffs last year. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were... Oh, you know what? No, they beat the Vikings. That's right. They actually won a playoff game. Surprising enough. But as far as this year, I don't see them getting it done. I know they added Darren Waller, so that gives, Daniel Jones another weapon. They paid Daniel Jones, so he's going to want to prove that he's worth his deal. It's just tough, man. The NFC is just so weird, you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of great teams in the NFC. However, it's like, you really got to look at their division, like with the Eagles and the Cowboys. I definitely think both of those two teams are better than them. So I think automatically you got to look right there. Like, one of those, the Cowboys or the Eagles, one of those is going to be the division winner. And then one of those, I think, is going to make wild card no matter what out of the two. So with that being said, I don't think the Giants are going to be quite good enough to make the playoffs. So with all that being said, I'm going to put them as, I think they have the potential to be a wild card team. I just don't know if they'll miss. Let me tell you what, I'm going to put them in potential wild card. And the reason why I'm going to put them there and not the Broncos is for literally one reason. And I've already said it before. The AFC is significantly harder than the NFC. I think, and everyone will agree on that. I think it's easier for a team like the Giants with not a lot of competition necessarily to make the wild card compared to the Broncos, who will have a lot more teams trying to get those wild card spots, So with that being said, I think the Giants have some potential, with Saquon Barkley, as long as he can stay healthy. Daniel Jones is going to want to prove himself. Darren Waller adds a lot. And their defense, although it doesn't have a lot of big names on it, actually plays very well and keeps, the Giants in a lot of these games. And I actually really like their head coach, Brian Daboll. I think he was a huge addition to their team last year as far as, making their team more... more respectable, and he kind of really just came on bursting onto the scene, making sure that the franchise and the team knew, hey, you know what? we are going to give ourselves a chance every year, and we're going to take ourselves seriously, and we're going to make sure the league takes us seriously. So, with that being said, I'm going to leave them at potential wildcard teams. Alrighty, next team on the list, we have the Minnesota Vikings. The thing about the Minnesota Vikings, man, and I'll be the first to say this right now, is I know that they won like what 13 games last year. A lot of those games, man. Let me shift over so I'm more in the camera right here when I say this kind of stuff. With the Minnesota Vikings, they were in a lot of close games where it was very, very close. I don't think they win as many of those close games this year. I still think that division is very winnable for them, even though the Lions have kind of taken a step up, the Bears have taken a step up. I'm not exactly sure how to feel about the Packers. I don't know if they've gone up or down with leaving Aaron Rodgers. I mean, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is better, in my opinion, than Jordan Love. However, I'm not exactly sure if him leaving means that the Packers automatically go to the bottom of the barrel. But with that being said, the Vikings still do have a very good offense. Even though they lost Adam Thielen, they still have Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in the league, since he's came into the league. They do still have actually, you know what? They don't even have Dalvin Cook anymore. So I think that brings them down a little bit too. I mean, not that Alexander Madison or however you say his name isn't a terrible running back, but Dalvin Cook is like a premier running back. You know what I mean? Like he could win a game for you when it really comes down to it. So, and then with that being said too, Kirk Cousins isn't terrible. He's not the type of guy who, is necessarily going to go win you the game, but he's also not going to really be the guy that loses you the game. You know what I mean? Like, and with them being in the NFC, that kind of brings me back to what I said about the Giants. It's like the amount of competition in the league, as far as the NFC side, it's just not a whole lot there. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I think the Vikings, man, I'm going to have them as potential wildcard team. I know I'm starting to fill up a lot of teams right here, but this tier right here could end up being the most filled up tier just because there's a lot of teams that are either going to be at that threshold or just below the threshold of whether or not they can make the playoffs or not. It really just depends if a lot of the games go their way or not. You know what I mean? It's whether, a fumble, comes back to your team, or it flips and goes to the other team, to the defense, and now you just costed yourself the game. You know what I mean? So that's what a lot of these teams in this, tier kind of are going to be, reflective on, is whether or not they have the games go their way or not. So with that being said, I'm going to put the Vikings as potential wildcard teams. All right, next on the list, we have the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Los Angeles Rams, they're another one of those teams where it's like, I know they won the Super Bowl just a couple years ago, but last year was atrocious for them. Kind of similar to the Broncos, how they were expected to have a better year, but it just didn't really go their way. With the Rams, it was a lot of injuries that I think plagued them and made them have just such a bad year. Like, I like their quarterback. I think Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback, especially when you're looking at the NFC. I think he's one of the top tier quarterbacks in the NFC. And they also have one of the top wide receivers in the NFC, and not only just the NFC, but the whole entire league in Cooper Kupp. So those two right there make them so that they're a likable team. However, on the offensive side, besides Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, it's like, what else do you really have? I mean, their O-line's not that great. Outside of Cooper Kupp, they don't really have a lot of great wide receivers. Their running back, I mean, is their starting running back going to be Cam Akers? Is it going to be some kid that they drafted? I mean, it's like, who knows how that's going to go? And then you flip over to the defensive side of the ball, which, of course, the number one thing you think of when it comes to the Rams defense is Aaron Donald. Like, that's a given. Like, Aaron Donald is going to go down as one of the greatest defensive linemen of all time, if not the greatest. And so you can't take, that for granted. But after Aaron Donald on that defense, it's like, literally, who do they have? Who do they have? Like, seriously, they got rid of Jalen Ramsey. They decided to move off from him, which, for better or for worse, I don't really know why they did that. I mean, if you really think about it, is like, why would you get rid of your best player in your secondary, someone who's considered probably a leader on that defense, someone who brings energy to that defense, and you just decide to get rid of him? And, like, I don't even know what they really got for him. It's like, I don't know about the Rams, man. Like, I don't see it for them. I don't see it for them at all. And I'll be honest with you guys, I could really see them being, I mean, they could be young but intriguing, but it's like, who is, like, do they have young guys on their defense that could be, like, emerging? Are they mediocre at best? Like, Man, I don't know. I don't think they're number one pick contenders. I don't think they're that bad. Like I said, they have those three players that I mentioned that are really good, and their head coach. I haven't even brought up their head coach. Sean McVay is actually a very good head coach. I don't think that's a surprise, when I say that. But when you don't have a lot to work with, it's like your offensive schemes and your plays can only do so much when you don't have the players to execute them. You know what I mean? So I think I'm going to end up putting the Rams at mediocre at best. They could prove me wrong, and they could end up having these guys that I just have no idea who end up turning up for them and making them, looking like a lot better than what I have them picked out to be here. But with all that being said, I am going to put them at mediocre at best, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next team. All right, here we go. Next team we have is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I know when you see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as of lately, you think, oh, snap, Tom Brady, right? But no, no, not this year. This is Baker Mayfield, Tampa Bay, and I'll be honest, they still have all of those same pieces from when they won the Super Bowl just a couple years ago. I mean, minus what was it? Leonard. Oh my God, I can't even think of his name. Leonard Fournette, Tom Brady. I mean, obviously Gronk's not there. They don't have Antonio Brown. Like these are all guys that Tom Brady kind of brought to the team to kind of like, you know, bring the final pieces that they would need to get over the hump for that Super Bowl, but nonetheless, they still have Mike Evans. They still have Chris Godwin. Rashad White's not a bad running back. And that defense overall has a lot of good pieces. I mean, some of them just can't stay healthy. I'm pretty sure their secondary, if I remember correctly, gets injured almost every single year. So the tough thing for the Bucks is Baker Mayfield gonna take that step up and be a good quarterback for them, or is he gonna just play average or less than average like he has these past couple years? Like it really is going to boil down to that. But I'll be honest with you guys, I could really see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being here with the Rams and being really just mediocre at best. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't see a lot of hope for them. I see both of these teams honestly winning about 6 games, maybe 7, and that's just not going to cut it for you guys in the NFL and in making the playoffs. Like that's just not going to happen. So I don't really have a lot else to say for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think they even have that great of a coaching staff. I don't think Todd Bowles is that great of a head coach. Like, I just really don't see it for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I really just think they're going to be mediocre at best. So I'm going to go ahead and leave them on that tier, and we're going to go ahead and move on to this next team. With the next team on the list, we have ourselves the Detroit Lions, who, although they had a very, very bad start to their season last year with Dan Campbell and the whole crew, they ended the season very, very well. In fact, they beat the Green Bay Packers and sent my Seahawks to the playoffs, which I was very, very happy about. I'm not going to lie, that the last couple games of the season for the Lions, I was rooting for the Lions. I was a big Lions fan at that time. But now looking at them for this upcoming year, I do understand the hype they have going into the season. I do think that they have a very good chance at winning their division. I could see them winning it over the Vikings. I could see them winning it over the Bears, over the Packers. I just think that they're a young team that has a lot of hype behind them, and I could really see it going good for them. And you know what? I've actually really liked Dan Campbell since he started coaching for them. I think he brings a lot of juice. He brings a lot of, he makes the players, give their best and give their all and give their effort. And he puts a lot of emotion but behind how he coaches. And I really like that about a coach. I think, when you can, make your team just want to follow you to the depths of hell, basically that's how good your leadership is. That's how much you command their respect and how much you make them like you. I think that says a lot about a coach. And with all the young talent on that team, I think they have a lot, of hype behind them, and it's for a good reason. And with all that being said too, I think Jared Goff, when it comes to the NFC, is actually a pretty good quarterback. Like when you stack him up there with who are the good quarterbacks in the NFC, I would say he's probably damn near top 5. If he'd be around there, top 5. So with that being said, I do think the Lions, I could really see them. Like I'm not gonna lie, I could see them being a playoff team. I really could. Like with Jared Goff, they got Amon St. Brown. They've got what's his face? Jameson Williams. When he comes back from suspension, he should be killing it for them. Their running backs, they drafted that running back in the first round. I can't think of his name right now, but y'all know who I'm talking about. And if you guys are NFL fans, you guys know exactly who I'm talking about. He's supposed to be like a do it all kind of running back. Obviously he could run the ball, he can catch the ball, and I think he's going to, help them a lot with their offense. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They got Frank Ragnow and Penei Sewell. Those are two of their kind of pillars on the O line, as well as the defense too with Aiden Hutchinson. Like that was a great pickup for them. Like a couple years ago in the draft, he's been killing it for them, and they've overall just been adding pieces to that defense to make it a lot better. They added CJ Gardner Johnson, which is a great safety, just came from the Eagles, had a Super Bowl appearance. And I just overall think the Lions are kind of taking it up, like they are taking it to the next level year by year. And I think that they will be a playoff team this year. So that's what I have to say about the Lions. And I'm going to leave them as a playoff team. For our next team on the list, we have the Chicago Bears. And the first thing that you think of when it comes to the Chicago Bears is Justin Fields. I actually really like Justin Fields personally myself. I know Ohio State quarterbacks don't get a lot of love in the NFL. However, I think that he is one of the best mobile running quarterbacks in the league right now. I think he showed some of that last year that, like, you better watch out for him, because if you don't, he's going to see a hole, see a lane, and he's going to take it, and he's going to be down the field, 40, 50 yards, and could possibly end up scoring a touchdown that way. So I do think you have to watch out for that, as well as with the trade of their number one pick. They got DJ Moore, which I think is easily their number one wide receiver now on the team. Now he's going to have someone that he can throw the ball to, that he can rely on, as well as he's got Mooney, he's got Chase Claypool. Like, he's got weapons now. He's got wide receivers. The number one thing with the Bears is going to be whether or not that O-line can protect Fields when he does decide to stay in the pocket. And then the other thing when it comes to the Bears is going to be that defense, and whether or not that defense can keep them in close games. I know they have a good young secondary. They also added Tremaine Edmonds as a middle linebacker to that team, which I actually really like Tremaine Edmonds. So with all that being said, I do think they have a lot of intriguing pieces, but I'm just not exactly sure how far they can get with those pieces. And then again, like I said, that O-line just doesn't give me a lot of hopes for Justin Fields. I don't know, man. Like the Bears, it's hard to say that they are going to be a playoff team. You know what I mean? Like, I know I said that for that division, any of the teams can win that division. I just kind of lean more sort towards the Vikings or the Lions winning it, and not necessarily the Bears. Would it surprise me, though, if the Bears just absolutely turn up, have a great season, and win that division? It wouldn't surprise me a whole lot. I'm not leaning towards it, and I'll be honest with you guys. I just see the Bears missing the playoffs. I don't see them really being able to get over the hump quite yet. Now, does that mean that they won't, get over the hump in the next couple of seasons or so? I don't know. We'll see. I think that they could. They have a good chance to, but as of this next season, I don't see it. With the next team on the list, we have the San Francisco 49ers. I'll be honest with you guys, I hate the 49ers, and that shouldn't be surprising to you guys considering that I'm a Seahawks fan. The 49ers have been our rivals for better part of 10 years, if not longer. So, ever since my Seahawks have been relevant, ever since the Niners, as of, the past 10 years have been relevant, we've been rivals. So, nonetheless, though, I do respect the 49ers. I don't think you can have a rival without, some give and take as far as wins and losses with the team. I do think that the 49ers have an excellent roster. I think their biggest question mark is the quarterback. Like, Brock Purdy came out of nowhere, right? As Mr. Irrelevant, like, he looked great when he, stepped onto the scene and they let him play. However, with his injury, who knows if he's going to come back the same, you know what I mean? And, with him being injured, we don't even know if he's going to be able to start the season or not. Like, it's very up in the air whether or not he's going to start. And with their backup quarterbacks, they have Trey Lance, which nobody knows what Trey Lance is. Like, we know that he's supposed to have potentially a high ceiling. However, with his injury, we didn't get to really see a lot from him. We haven't really heard a lot about him. And also in the offseason, they picked up Sam Darnold, which I don't think Sam Darnold is the type of quarterback that will go and win you games. But at the same time, I think he's good enough in that system to where he can win you games. So with the rest of that team, though, with, Christian McCaffrey, with George Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, that offensive line is not terrible. They got a lot of good pieces in that offensive line. Like, that is a really good offense. It just is going to, it's going to stem around whether or not the quarterback, whoever starts, can, keep them together and, can just play good quality football and get it to those guys. You know what I mean? And Kyle Shanahan's offense has always been really, really good. He just hasn't been able to find that solid quarterback yet. So With that being said, that's just the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball is actually where starts to get ridiculous. And I know, I said all those guys on offense, and you're like, wow, that already is ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about. That defense is even more ridiculous. I mean, let's just start off by saying we got Nick Bosa, who every single year contends for Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the greatest defensive linemen in the league. They added Javon Hargrave from the Eagles, another great defensive lineman. They already had Eric Armstead. That defensive line is ridiculous. And then you move back a level to the linebackers. You got Fred Warner, who's potentially the best middle linebacker in the league, almost the best, just all around linebacker in the league, I would probably say. So, with that right there, you already have two guys who are always like fighting for potential defensive player of the year type guys. That secondary is not terrible. They got the Hufanga safety guy. He's really good too. All around that defense is just really, really, really good. So, with all that being said, they have a lot of great pieces on both defense and offense. It'll just be interesting with the quarterback whether or not they can really take it to that next level or not. And I'll be honest with you guys, it is tempting to want to put them in Super Bowl contenders, but I can't put them there without knowing how certain their quarterback position is. So that's going to leave me with them at playoff team. As much as I want to say that they're Super Bowl contenders because of how stacked that team is, the quarterback is the biggest position on your team, and you can't have that be your question mark. So with that being said, I am leaving the 49ers as playoff team. Like, they're 100%, I think, will make the playoffs. Unless something catastrophic happens where they just are riddled with injuries, like they have in the past, they are going to be a playoff team. So with that being said, I am leaving them there. If they get great quarterback play throughout the season, they will definitely be a Super Bowl contender. But for now, playoff team. All right, all right, all right. So next on the list, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that just came from being in the Super Bowl. Now, although they lost, that was a very good Super Bowl. In fact, I believe I almost said Green Bay Packers. The Philadelphia Eagles were winning that game up until halftime. Like, I'm pretty sure after halftime is when it all started to go downhill and started not going very well for them. So I think Jalen Hurts has showed that he can be a starting quarterback and that he's a very good quarterback. I mean, their offensive weapons are phenomenal with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard. I mean, they just have so many good weapons on the offense. I mean, that offensive line is just phenomenal with Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson. Like, there's not a lot of offenses that can compete with that. You know what I mean? Like, they're just phenomenal. That defense is great too with Darius Slay. They got James Bradbury. They got TJ Edwards, I believe, still in the linebacking core. They got a lot of rookies that they got too. A lot of those guys from Georgia. They got Jalen Carter. I mean, they still got Cox on the defensive line. I mean, they have a lot of good players. They got Hassan Reddick, who was just great for them last year. Like, I still see the Philadelphia Eagles being Super Bowl contenders. Like, when you look at it, like I said earlier in the video, with the NFC, there's just not as much competition there as there is with the AFC. And it just is not surprising to me to have the Eagles be Super Bowl contenders again, because like I said, when you're in the NFC and you get to the playoffs, there's not a lot of great teams that you really have to go through like you do in the AFC. And I could very much see the Eagles making their way to the NFC Championship and being a possible Super Bowl contender. So there's not a lot to be said about the Eagles. They kept a lot of their guys that they, had with the Super Bowl team last year. And the guys that they did lose, they've got really good replacements for. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and keep the Eagles at Super Bowl contenders. I think that's a great spot for them. Next on the list, we have the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. And, if the Raiders were in another division, I think that people have a lot more respect for them than the division that they're in right now. Not only the division they're in, but the conference, like I've said, with the AFC. And then, like I said, with their division, if you look at it a little bit deeper, I mean, you got the Kansas City Chiefs, man. You got the Chargers. You've got the Broncos. You got the Raiders. And I'm sorry, I just don't see the Raiders being better than any of those teams in their division. Like, they have a lot of great pieces. Like, they have one of my favorite players in the league on their defense in Mad Max Crosby. Like, I think that dude's a beast. He's a stud. He's one of the best defensive linemen in the league right now. Like, and then on the offense, man, they got Devontae Adams. Like, there is not a lot of wide receivers in this league that are better than Devontae Adams. Let me just tell you, like, there's not. But the thing is with the level of competition in their division and their conference, it's really hard for them to be a team that everyone has being their favorites. You know what I mean? Like, they're not there yet, you know what I mean? The offensive line is not what it should be. It's not a good offensive line at all. The defense, besides their defensive line, is just atrocious. They don't have really any linebackers that stand out. They don't really have anyone in their secondary that stands out. I mean, literally, when you break it down, the only pieces on their team that I do like is Josh Jacobs. If they even decide to keep him, right now he's being franchise tagged. I mean, he led the league last year in rushing yards. He was the rushing yards leader. So, I mean, that right there is really good for them. They have that going for them. But as of right now, we're not sure about him. Devontae Adams, I really like, obviously, like I said. I mean, Jimmy G is not terrible, but he's not great. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see if he can even stay healthy the whole season, too. And then, like I said, on the defense, I like Max Crosby. I like Chandler Jones. But besides that, there's nothing. There's nothing else that I like about them. So, with that being said, as far as what tier I think they belong in, guys, I'll be honest with you. I really see them just being mediocre at best, you know. As long, you know, with the Rams, the Bucks, and the Raiders, I really just see them being like 6, 17, 6, 7 wins, you know, a season. Like that's really all I see for them as their peak. Like I don't see them getting really any more wins than that. And in fact, all three of those teams could get less wins than 6 or 7. I could see some of them getting 4 or 5. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't look good for the Raiders, and I think they have a lot to go before they can be considered a playoff team. So with that being said, we're gonna go on to our next team on the list. With the next team on the list, we have the Green Bay Packers, and man, the Green Bay Packers have been a big talk of the offseason with the fact that they have lost Aaron Rodgers, you know, AR-12. It's tough, man. Like Jordan Love, we haven't heard really anything about, good or bad. And, you know, it's just as far as what they did with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I know he didn't really like a lot of his younger guys on his team. I mean, that's just not where he's at in his career right now. He doesn't want to really mentor a lot of young guys, which at the same time doesn't really make a lot of sense because he's going to the Jets where he is going to have a lot. Oops. I did not mean to right click there. My bad. Where he's going to the Jets where he has a lot of young guys who, although are a lot better than the young guys on the Packers, at least in my opinion, with Sauce Gardner, obviously, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. They're guys that have proven themselves over the 1 year more than any of the people on the Packers have. And so them with Jordan Love, I mean, that defense is not bad with Jerry Alexander, Rashawn Gary. I mean, they've got pieces on that defense, but I'll be honest with you guys, I really don't see them being a potential wild card team. I definitely see them missing the playoffs, but I'll be honest with you guys, like, I don't know if I view them less than the Bears. If you go based off of roster, I think they're less than the Bears, but I, at the same time, don't know if I put them with these guys either. I could very well see them beating all three of these teams here if they go head to head. That's tough, man. That is tough. I'll be honest with you guys. If the Bears and the Packers go head to head, I think I pick the Bears, honestly. Same thing with the Broncos. If the Broncos and the Packers go head to head, I pick the Broncos. When it comes to these teams right here, though, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a coin toss, really. Honestly, I think it is. I mean, and Matt LaFleur has proven to be a good coach, but he's got to prove himself to be a good coach without Aaron Rodgers. It was the same thing that happened with Mike McCarthy. He had to prove if he was going to be a good coach without Aaron Rodgers with the Dallas Cowboys, and we're kind of figuring that out now, you know what I mean? So, with that being said, I think the Packers will be mediocre at best. Like I said with the Raiders, 6 or 7 wins is kind of like their peak. That's like what I really see them doing at best. So, with that being said, I am putting the Packers at mediocre. Next on the list, we have the Washington Commanders, and although they have a great defense, they have a great coach. Their big question is their quarterback. Like, they have Sam Howell. Like, might as well be a rookie. I know he was drafted last year, but got little to no playing time. I think he played maybe like 1 or 2 games for them last year at the end of the season. And it just wasn't anything really great. Like I know they have Scary Terry. They got Brian Robinson. They just, outside of, that, they don't really have an offense. Like their team is just. And then again, with the division they're in, they're not better than the Giants. They're not better than the Cowboys. They're not better than the Eagles. Like, it's rough to be a Washington Commanders fan, and I feel for you guys. And I'll be honest with you, like, that defense, I don't think is going to be enough to win them a lot of games. And I'll be honest with you guys, I think they're going to be my first team that I have in young but intriguing. I just don't really see them being, getting anywhere with this season. Like, I don't see them getting 6 or 7 wins at all. I could see them getting, 4 or 5, maybe even less than that. You know what I mean? So I think, the Commanders fans have a rough season ahead of them. We'll see. Sam Howell can end up being great for all we know, but I don't see it being in this next season. I'll tell you that right now. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next team. All right, with our next team, we have the Arizona Cardinals, and man, let me tell you, in my opinion, I'll be brutally honest right now. I think the Arizona Cardinals could be the worst team in the NFL next year, like by far. Like, they might not win a game next year. Like, let's be honest. Kyler Murray is injured. He's not going to be playing majority of this season if he even decides to come back at all this season. Like, they are hurting, they're not keeping DeAndre Hopkins. They got Hollywood Brown, which is a great receiver, but he's really just speed. That's all he is. Him and Rondale Moore, they're speedy guys, but they're not big. They don't really have a big threat. Don't even know who their tight end is, I'll be honest with you. Oh, they have Zach Ertz, who's aging, and I believe he's been injured too, if he's even still going to be there next season. Their offensive line is not great. Their defense is not great either, outside of Budda Baker, in my opinion. Like, I think the Arizona Cardinals have a very great chance at being the worst team in the league next year. And so with that being said, guys, I'm putting them as the first team in the number one pick contention. Like I'm serious when I say this, guys. They might be the worst team in the NFL. Head into next season's draft Caleb Williams, and be looking to trade Kyler Murray to some other team and get what they can for him. Like, they have a lot of rebuilding to do, and that's coming from a Seahawks fan who has seen them in the division, played them multiple times. Even with Kyler Murray, I'll be honest with you guys, when he's healthy and he's playing, they're not great. Like, you shut down DeAndre Hopkins last year when we played them, and they didn't have anything. Like, they were not there. Like, I don't know, man. Like, Cardinals fans, like, I'm sorry. I lived in Arizona for a few years, and so I know how diehard a lot of their Cardinals fans are. But I would just not have high hopes for next season, guys. I would be looking towards next season's draft if I was you guys. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next team. With the next team, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I think the biggest thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as their success is going to be how the rest of the division plays out. I still think that, like I said earlier, the Cincinnati Bengals are Super Bowl contenders. You have the Baltimore Ravens, who are a potential wild card. Now, the question is whether or not are the Steelers at the same level right now as the Baltimore Ravens. Like, that's kind of where I have them at. I think that the Steelers and the Ravens are very, very much going to be competing at the same level next season for a wild card spot in the conference. Like, I think Kenny Pickett takes it up a step. I think George Pickens takes it up a step. Like, they have Deontay Johnson still. They have Najee Harris. Like, that offensive line is young but getting better. The defense, I mean, the Steelers have always been about their defense. Like, their defense is great every single year. I mean, TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year caliber player. Cameron Hayward is such a great player too. I mean, he's getting older, but he still plays at a very high level. Their linebacking core is not very bad either. They have Alex Highsmith, very good player. Excuse me, guys. Their secondary with Minkah Fitzpatrick is very, very good. Like, overall, the Steelers have always had a very, very good defense, and I think they have a lot of young pieces on their offense that are really going to be the story of the Steelers next season, and Kenny Pickett's going to be the story of next season, and I could see it, man. I could see them being a team that scrapes by and is a potential wild card team. Like, I really could see it. Like, the difference, I think, between the Broncos and the Steelers is I think their offense is just going to be a little bit better. I know Russell Wilson, obviously proven vet. Their head coach, Sean Payton's going to take him up a step. I just like a lot of their pieces on the offense better than I do the Broncos. Like, I know they have Cameron Sutton. They got, Tim Patrick. They've got Javonte Williams, who is coming off an injury. We do need to bring that up. But I just like the Steelers better. I mean, I think Najee Harris is going to be great. Kenny Pickett's going to take a step up. And then I think their wide receiver core is just overall better. And nonetheless, I didn't even bring up their tight end, Freiermuth, is probably a top tight end in the league right now, and especially if Kenny Pickett takes another step up, like I think him like Freiermuth, that just adds more value to him right there. So I think the Steelers are potential wild card teams, and I think potential wild card team, and I think that that's very fitting for them. I think it'll be a toss up between the Steelers and the Ravens as far as positioning in the division, and so that's where I'm going to leave them as a potential wild card team. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the next team. With that being said, we have the Buffalo Bills. And man, since Josh Allen has bursted onto the scene, maybe not necessarily his first year with the Bills, and maybe not even really his second year, but these past couple of seasons of the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen have been nothing but spectacular to watch. It's fun football. I mean, the guy's got an arm, he can run the ball. I mean, he's gigantic and he's hurdling over defenders. Like, they are a really fun team to watch. However, I think one of their biggest weaknesses has been their run game. They are very pass reliant. I mean, they haven't had just much of a run game at all the past couple seasons. And so it kind of makes them to be a little predictable, when they go against a lot of these other higher tier teams in the playoffs. They just can't quite get there. I think their defense is very good. They have a lot of players on their defensive line that they can rotate, which keeps them fresh. Their linebacking core is good, but it's going to take a step down with them losing Tremaine Edmonds. I think their secondary is great, obviously, with Tre'Davious White. They've got Micah Hyde. And then Jordan Poyer. All of those guys are getting a little bit older now, though, and I could see them regressing a little bit. I have been a big fan of the Bills and a lot of the pieces they have, and I still think that they are a great team. However, I just don't see them being as great as they have been these past couple seasons. I mean, their division's getting better too, with the Dolphins and the Jets taking a step up. Who knows what the Patriots are going to be, but with all that being said, I think that the Buffalo Bills are still a playoff team. I just don't think that they're Super Bowl contenders. Like, I very much could see, I see the 49ers and the Buffalo Bills being kind of in similar situations. They have to have these particular position groups play to their strengths and play very well in order for them to be Super Bowl contenders, but we got to see it, you know what I mean? Like, I got to see it before I believe it, type of thing, So with that being said, I think the Bills stay as a playoff team. I don't think they kind of drop off like a lot of other people have. Like, I've seen a lot of other people saying that the Buffalo Bills, they're going to fall off completely, like, the rest of the teams in the division are going to take over. I just don't quite see that yet. I think they still have a lot of great pieces, and I think that they can still play at a very high level. I think Josh Allen can still play at a high level. So with that being said, I'm going to leave them as a playoff team. Next on the list, we have the Atlanta Falcons, and this is a team that, I'll be honest with you guys, I am not high on. I think they have a lot of young pieces that could potentially get better over this next season. Like, Desmond Ridder, we'll see what he looks like after having a full season under his belt. They've got Bijan Robinson, which they drafted, in the first round, which, there's a lot of hype around him. He's supposed to be like one of those guys that can do it all, run, pass, catch, block, just everything. You know what I mean? I think he's going to be a very valuable piece of that offense, along with Drake London. They've got the tight end. God, I can't even think of his name. Kyle Pitts. They've got a lot of intriguing pieces on their offense. Their offensive line's not terrible. However, it's the defense, man. Their defense is just not it, man. I mean, they have AJ Terrell. He's a great corner, but other than that, I mean, they did sign Jesse Bates, so I think that makes their defense a little bit better. However, I just still don't see them being a team that can take it to the top and take it to the playoffs just quite yet. So I'm going to add them, unfortunately, with the Commanders and have them be young but intriguing. And I'll be honest, that division is going to be a division that they can very much compete in. However, I just don't see them taking it over the Saints, and I don't really even see them taking it over the Panthers. However, when I put them in this category that says young and intriguing, I do very much believe that, though. I do think that they're young and they are intriguing, and I can see them getting better in the next couple seasons, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there, But for now, we're going to keep them right here at this spot at young but intriguing. All right, next on this list, we have my team, my hometown team, my favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks. And this one's gonna be quick, guys. Let's just go ahead and get it over with. Like, Super Bowl favorites. I mean, come on now. Like, with Geno Smith, like nobody expected anything for him. They wrote him off, but he ain't right back. You know what I mean? Like, let's just come on. Like, that's where they belong. Ain't nothing else to say about that. But all right, no, 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 I'm joking, guys. I'm joking. I am a big Seahawks fan. However, I am a reasonable Seahawks fan, and I know that we're not Super Bowl favorites. I know we're not even Super Bowl contenders, but let me tell you this right now. I don't see my Seahawks now. Like I said, I am a bit biased, but I am trying to be more reasonable. We made the playoffs last year with nobody expecting us to make the playoffs, and with those rookies that we drafted, I mean, arguably last year we had the best rookie class out of the whole entire league. With those guys having another year underneath their belt, when I say guys like Kenneth Walker, Tariq Woolen, both of our tackles, with Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, like there's a lot of promise with those guys as far as taking another step up this year. And then to add to that, the draft that we had this year with Devin Witherspoon, with adding Charbonnet to the running back core. I mean, come on, like we have added great pieces to our team, and I wouldn't necessarily say that we could, maybe beat the Dolphins, I think we could beat the Lions, 49ers, it's back and forth. Bills, I'm not sure, but let me tell you, I think that we're better than these teams right here. Like, flat out. I think that my Seahawks can beat any of these potential wildcard teams. And you guys might think I'm crazy. And like I said, it's a little bit biased. But I think that my Seahawks are playoff teams. We're not Super Bowl contenders. We're definitely not Super Bowl favorites. But mark my words, my Seahawks will be in the playoffs this next season. And you guys can come back to this video if I'm wrong and hate on me all you want. But this is where I'm going to leave them for now. Alrighty, next on this list, we have the Patriots. And man, the Patriots, I don't know how I feel about you guys. Let me be honest with you. I don't feel great about you guys, first off. But Bill Belichick, it's hard to say that a Bill Belichick team is going to do terrible, man. Like for so many years of my life, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm 22, turning 23. Almost all my life, the Patriots have been the talk of the NFL. I mean, I know most of that had to do with Tom Brady being on that team, but these past couple seasons have not been great for the Patriots. And I mean, that's post Tom Brady. And so I'll be honest with you guys, with Mac Jones and with the lack of offense that they really just have, I mean, it doesn't look great for them. And with them being in the division that they are, with the Jets, with the Dolphins and the Bills, and being in the AFC, it's a hard place to be for the Patriots. And I'll be honest with you guys, I really see them being a mediocre at best team, like the rest of these teams. You're talking like 6 or 7 wins at the most, like not good. And I don't see them, honestly, like this is just my personal opinion, I don't see them being great for a couple years, like if not a few years. Like they had their great run, their great 20-year stretch, but I think they've got some hurting to do for the next few years before they really start recorrecting things and getting them where they need to be. So with that being said, I don't have a lot to say about the Patriots. I think their defense is pretty good. They've got a lot of good players like Matt Judon. They've got a lot of other younger guys on like that defensive line and that secondary that are decent, but that offense, man, that offense is just, it's not good. So with that being said, we're going to keep them at mediocre at best and move on to our next team. Alrighty, next on this list, we have the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to make this one sweet and short. Deshaun Watson didn't have a great, start to his season last year, coming off his suspension. I think he won't be as bad as he was now, having a full offseason underneath his belt. They got Amari Cooper. Outside of Amari Cooper, I don't really know what else they have. I mean, they've got Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is always great. I mean, he's a top running back in the league every single year. Amari Cooper is a great wide receiver. They've got Deshaun Watson. That offensive line is not terrible. But the main talk of the Cleveland Browns is their defense with Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, as well as a few other pieces on that defense that I can't really think about right now or put names to right now. But the tough thing for the Browns is kind of like some of these other teams is the division that they're in and the fact that they're in the AFC. Like, I don't see the Browns being better than the Steelers, the Ravens, or the Bengals. And just there's too many teams fighting for those wild card spots that I just don't really see them overtaking the wild card spot from another team, especially in the AFC. So with that being said, I see them being better than a lot of these teams, in this category here. but not better than these. And I think it's a pretty good spot to put them right here with missing the playoffs. I could see them being a 7-8 win team, maybe 9 wins if things really go their way. But I just don't see them being a wild card team. And with that being said, that's where I'm going to leave the Browns. Next on the list, we have the Houston Texans. Now, I think they had a phenomenal draft. Obviously, they stole the draft with getting C.J. Stroud, with getting Will Anderson. I just think that they are not going to be able to really win the division. Like I said, it's the AFC. They just don't really have the pieces yet. They lost Brandon Cooks. I mean, they don't have a lot of, talent on offense outside of obviously young quarterback. They've got Dalton Schultz that they added. Wide receivers, I just don't really see it. Running backs, I don't really see it. With all that being said, I think they've got a lot to prove. Their defense doesn't really have a lot of, great pieces either. I think they are going to be a team that is, I'll be honest with you guys, young but intriguing. I don't see them being number one pick again. I think they've got enough pieces there where they will win a few games. I don't think they're going to be like a 2-win or less team. I could really see the Texans winning about 4 or 5 games, not like 6 or 7 like these teams, or not like 8 or 9 like these teams, but definitely like 4 or 5 like with the rest of these teams. Arguably, I'd have the Falcons above them. However, I just don't have the Falcons beating any of these teams up here. I don't think they're quite on that level yet. But with the Texans, I think they've got a few years before they start adding, maybe not a few years, but a couple years where they start adding a couple more, players to that team before they really start turning heads and becoming a team that, overtakes the AFC and overtakes that division. Next on the list, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City Chiefs, this is, when I say this is going to be a quick one to talk about, I really do mean it. Like, you can't put them anywhere else but Super Bowl favorites. I mean, they've won the Super Bowl last year. They've been in the Super Bowl these past few years. I mean, if they're not in the Super Bowl, they're in the AFC Championship. Like, they are the talk of the league. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is for sure, like, hands down, nobody argues, the best quarterback in the league. Like, it's not close. He is the best. Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the league, and it might be considered, honestly, the best weapon in the league overall. Just offensively, best weapon. Like, when you need a guy to go get you a touchdown or go get you a first down, Travis Kelce will get that for you. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that when they need it, you better have 2 guys on Travis Kelce and still hope and pray that he's not going to go up there and snag that ball. Because let me tell you, he is great, and so is Mahomes. Andy Reid is arguably the best coach in the league, if not the best offensive coach in the league. That offense is just incredible. Like, they proved that they didn't even need Tyreek Hill to go out and be one of the best offenses in the league and to be one of the best overall teams in the league. And what I was getting at there was their defense. Their defense is young, but is great. I mean, Trent McDuffie's good. They got, what's his name? Snead, the other corner, great. Their safeties are getting better. I mean, Chris Jones is arguably always the defensive player of the year. Like, their team just figures it out each year. I mean, their defense doesn't let them down. They're not one of the best defenses, but they still are good enough to not lose the Chiefs their games. And their offense is just phenomenal. One of the best offenses in the game. And, until another team starts pushing them around and, really starts, getting even with the Chiefs are the team to beat, and they're the Super Bowl favorites. And we'll see how that goes for them this next year, but I think they're going to be the team that everyone's gunning after, especially with them being the Super Bowl champions. So with that being said, I don't think there's a whole lot else to talk about. The Chiefs are Super Bowl favorites. Next on the list, we have the Dallas Cowboys, aka America's team. And I'll be honest, I say it like that because who doesn't get tired of hearing that? Unless you're a Cowboys fan, you absolutely get tired of hearing that. Now, however, I don't think the Cowboys are terrible. I don't think they're terrible, but I also don't think that they're great. I think it plays a lot in their favor that they are in the NFC. They don't have as much competition as teams in the AFC. However, they are a team that can just never get it done in the playoffs. They just can never get over the hump for whatever reason, man. Like, whether it's Dak Prescott or it's the defense just not being able to make that last stop. Like, I think their defense is great with Micah Parsons, with DeMarcus Lawrence. They've got good linebackers with Leighton Vander Esch and whatnot. Their secondary is great with Trayvon Diggs, and they've added Stephon Gilmore. Like, they've got a lot of pieces on that defense that make them a top defense in the league. It really just boils down to the offense and Dak Prescott and whether or not he can actually take them over that hump. They've got CD Lamb, they've got Brandon Cooks, they lost Ezekiel Elliott. However, I think Tony Pollard was their number one running back last year, anyways, in my opinion. So we'll see what they can do with Tony Pollard. That offensive line is good, but it's old, and it's getting harder for them to stay healthy. So with all that being said, though, I still see the Cowboys being for sure a playoff team. I think that they're better than a lot of these teams that are in the potential wild card spot right here. However, I it's tough, man. It really is tough because I could see one of these teams having a really good day and beating the Cowboys. But at the same time, I think the Cowboys are a surefire team, especially when Dak's playing, at his peak. That defense is playing at their peak. They are definitely a playoff team that is better than the rest of these teams down here. And with that being said, I think, they're a playoff team. I don't see them missing the playoffs, whether it's them winning their division or them being a wild card team. And I know that they lost Kellen Moore to the Chargers, and Mike McCarthy is going to take over play calling. We'll see how that goes. However, though, I think as long as they have the players that can execute the game plan, which I think that they do, I think they're going to be all right. So with that being said, I think that they are still a bona fide playoff team, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next team. Alrighty, the next team on our list is I almost said San Diego Chargers, the LA Chargers with Justin Herbert, which I think Justin Herbert is easily a top quarterback in this league. Not only with the arm that he has, but he's athletic, he can move the ball. I mean, they've got good wide receivers in Keenan Allen as long as he can stay healthy, and Mike Williams as long as he can stay healthy. And I say that because they were not healthy last year. They have guys. They just got to stay healthy. You know what I mean? Austin Eckler is easily a top running back in the league. They drafted another wide receiver to help them. Gerald Everett's not a bad tight end. They have offensive pieces. Their offensive line is great, too. Their offensive line last year was injured, and I think that kind of, hurt them a lot last year with how it ended up going for them. But I think this year, if they're all healthy, that offense is amazing. That defense is amazing as well with Joey Bosa, with Khalil Mack. I mean, in that secondary, you have what's his name? The corner that got injured, J.C. Jackson, he's great. You got Derwin James, he's great. I mean, this team has players on both sides of the ball that can get you over the hump and can make you a bona fide playoff team. It's just whether or not that they can stay healthy. They got to be able to stay healthy as a collective core. And if they can do that, then they're a team that I almost think can take on anyone. But at the same time, they've got to stay healthy, and their head coach has got to keep them in the right place throughout the season and stay consistent. I would say that they're a playoff team. However, being that they are also in the same division as the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Raiders, I think that kind of tears them apart a little bit. But I still see them being a team that makes the playoffs. However, I think that they're a little bit more bumped down towards a potential wild card spot. Now, like I said, I want to put them in playoff, in this playoff tier with the rest of these teams. I think that they're great. I mean, y'all might want to hate because I put my Seahawks up here and they're not up there. But my Seahawks beat them last year. If you don't remember, go back to that game and watch that game. My Seahawks were the better team in that game. So I need to see it to believe it when it comes to these Chargers. Like I said, I think they have all the pieces, but they gotta hold it together, and they gotta just do it. They gotta show me, you know what I mean? So with that being said, potential wild card team. I mean, not even really potential. I think that they are either win the division type of team or for sure wild card. And I don't think they're gonna win the division because of the Chiefs, but I think they're for sure wild card team. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next team. Alrighty, the next team on this list, we have the New York Jets. Now, I know the Jets have added Aaron Rodgers, who I still think is a top quarterback in the league, regardless of his age. I mean, if you just look the year before last year, he was an MVP, and then the year before that, he was an MVP. I mean, the guy can still huck the pigskin, like that. He is a great quarterback, and they've got a lot of young players on their team that have a lot of hype around them. They got Garrett Wilson, Offensive Player of the Year. They got Breece Hall, who was arguably going to be, Offensive Player of the Year before his injury. And, I mean, those are two great pieces there. I mean, they've got other great pieces on their offense as well. Their offensive line is kind of iffy. They're good, but they're not great type of thing. You know what I mean? Their defense has a lot of great players, too. Obviously, Sauce Gardner is one of the first ones that comes to mind. They got Quinnen Williams on the defensive line. However, I'm not quite ready to put them there as a bona fide playoff team. I think they're another one of those teams that, because of the division they're in and because of the them being in the AFC, they're just another casualty to that. I don't see them being better than the Dolphins. I don't see them being better than the Bills, and it's hard for me to say that they beat out another team for a wild card spot. Do I think it's possible? Yes, I do think it's possible for them to be a wild card team. However, I'll be honest with you guys, I lean more so towards them being a team that just barely misses the playoffs. Like just barely. Like one or two games are just not going to go their way and they're just going to barely miss it. Like I think all of these teams that are in this category, including the Jets that I just put in there, I only really see them winning potentially 7 to 8 games. I think, if a couple of these games were to go more in their favor, I think they win about, 8 to 9, maybe even 10 games potentially. However, I just think that these are going to be the teams that end up a little bit on the, drawing the short stick in the game, a little bit not going to go their way. And like I said, the Jets have a lot of young players on their team that are promising, but I just don't think that they're quite ready yet. I think if Aaron Rodgers decides to stay with them for a couple seasons, maybe a few seasons, I think they could be a Super Bowl contender type of team, or definitely for sure a playoff team. But with the way that the rest of the AFC looks, I just don't think that they're quite there yet. I think Aaron Rodgers helps a lot, but it just doesn't get them quite over that hump. And with that being said, I think the Jets are a team that just barely misses the playoffs. Like literally out of all these teams, just barely misses. Along with the Broncos, the Jets and the Broncos are the two teams that I say are the closest to being a potential wild card, but just cannot get over that hump. So with that being said, Jets being a missing playoff team. Next on the list, we have the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers drafted Bryce Young, and I think Bryce Young has the potential to be great in this league. However, I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve to his rookie season. I think they've got a lot of great pieces in Adam Thielen. They got Hayden Hurst. They added Miles Sanders. Their defense has already got some great players with Brian Burns and J.C. Horn. However, I think that division it's a very winnable division. I just don't see them quite getting over that hump. I don't see them being better than the Saints. I don't see them being better than any of these teams in the missing the playoffs, I'll be honest with you. I'll be real with you guys. I see the Panthers being mediocre at best, which says something about where they stand in their division, because I definitely think that they are better than the Falcons. Definitely better than them. I know that I said that the Falcons are young but intriguing, but I think the Panthers just have more pieces than they do that are just a little bit already more bona fide. They're already more certified. People know about them, and I think that they are closer to being a team that turns around the franchise quicker than the Falcons are, but I just don't see them being better than the Saints. I think the Saints have a lot more vets on their team and for sure a better defense than the Panthers do. So with that being said, we are going to leave the Panthers at mediocre at best. Like I said about the rest of these teams, I see them winning about 5, maybe 6 games at best, maybe 7 games. That's pushing it, but really 5 or 6 games is really where I see the Panthers being. And I like their hire of Frank Reich as their head coach. I think he was a great coach. It was time for the Colts to move on from him, but I think he is a great coach for the Panthers, or a great pickup, and, we'll see where it goes. You know what I mean? I think they are young, as far as Bryce Young, and we'll see where he can take the team. So with that being said, mediocre at best for the Panthers. Next on the list, we have the Tennessee Titans. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know how the Tennessee Titans do it, but each year they surprise us and they actually end up doing a lot better than everyone thinks that they do. And I think part of that might have to do with their head coach and Mike Vrabel, just encouraging his guys to play better than what the league thinks they are. But I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know what their quarterback situation is. Like Ryan Tannehill, I think he's done. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's got anything really left in the tank for him. Will Levis, we'll see if they end up starting him. Malik Willis, I don't even know why they drafted him. I thought maybe he was going to be the future, but then they drafted Will Levis. So who knows, honestly, guys? Like, really, who knows? Wide receivers, after they got rid of A.J. Brown, I was like, who are they throwing the ball to? Like, they got, what's his name? Trey Burks, or Traylon Burks, however, his name is, which I think he's young and he's got potential, but he's not a number 1. He's not a number 2. Like, oh, Titans fans, I feel it for you, because outside of Derrick Henry, you guys don't have anything. Like, anything at all. And then on the defensive side, outside of Kevin Byard, you got nothing. You really just got nothing. And I'll be honest with you guys, like, call me crazy right now, and this might be a hot take. I think the Titans are right here with the Cardinals. Honestly, like Derrick Henry might have a great season, but even him having a great season, I don't think wins them a lot of games. Like seriously, like I don't see him being King Henry that brings them like that gets like 2,000 yards or anything like that, or even close to 2,000 yards. Like I just don't think that with them not having as good of a passing offense, that really just makes it so people just stack the box and try to stop Derrick Henry. And who knows if Derrick Henry will even stay healthy? You know what I mean? Like he got injured last season. Who knows what's going to happen with that? And so, with all that being said, I really just could see the Titans fighting for a number 1 pick with the Cardinals. Like, I'm sorry, guys. You guys can come back and hate on me after the season's over next season, but I don't like anything about the Titans other than Derrick Henry. I'll be honest with you. So, with that being said, sorry, bottom of the barrel, number 1 pick contention. So, with that being said, moving on to the Colts in the same division, I think the Colts are for sure better than the Titans. Arguably, the Colts are even better than the Texans, in my opinion. Like, but I'll be honest with you guys, I don't see the Colts. I could see the Colts beating a lot of the teams in here, but I don't see the Colts beating a lot of teams in here. I'll be honest with you guys. Like, oh man, it's tough. Like, this one's tough for me, guys. I'll be honest with you. Like, I want to put the Colts right here at mediocre at best, but I like Jonathan Taylor. I think Pittman is a great wide receiver. I honestly think that Anthony Richardson is going to be great. Like I could see him really being like the next, Lamar Jackson, the next Cam Newton. Like as far as he has the athleticism, it's just going to be whether or not can he control that arm, can he get his accuracy down? Like if he can do all that kind of stuff, like I think he's top quarterback. You know what I mean? Like I'm not necessarily maybe top quarterback in the whole league, but he will be a formidable quarterback. He will be a threat that teams have to watch out for. And that defense is already good as it is. With DeForest Buckner, I mean, they've got who else do they got? I mean, that defense just always finds a way to play great. They have God, I can't even think of his name right now in the secondary who's pretty good. I'm pretty sure they got Blackman, the safety, that's pretty good. They've got a Kenny Moore. That's the guy that I'm trying to think of. Kenny Moore as a corner is really good. Not really a corner that gets talked about a whole lot, but I think that this team has a lot of great players. I just don't think that they've put it together yet. Their offensive line actually used to be really good, a couple seasons ago. They've since kind of fallen off a bit. However, I don't see them being bad enough to be in either of these two spots. I don't see them fighting for a number 1 pick. I don't think that they're as bad as the Texans, the Falcons, or the Commanders. I just don't see them being better than any of these teams in here. So I think that leaves me with having to put them at mediocre at best. I think they win easily 5 to 6, maybe 7 games this season coming up. But that's kind of just where I see them. Like, I don't see them being really any better than that, any worse than that. I think that's a perfect spot for them. And with that being said, we move on to our next team. Alrighty, last but not least, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, which a lot of people have started to put a lot of hype around them. I think Trevor Lawrence, ever since he's gotten paired up with Doug Peterson, has played out of this world. I think Trevor Lawrence is starting to look like that once-in-a-generation type of player that everyone talked about him being coming out of college, being like the next Andrew Luck. He's really looking like it. And I think he takes even a step higher than what he did last season, which they made the playoffs last season. So what does that mean? That they're going to be real serious playoff contenders. And the reason why I say that is because they're adding Calvin Ridley, who, although has not played for a season because of his suspension with gambling, I think that is a huge target to add to their offense. They still have Christian Kirk. They've got Evan Ingram. I really like their running back, Travis Etienne. I think he's great. He's a guy who can kind of do it all too. Their defense is surprisingly sneaky good. Like they've got Josh Allen. They've got players in the secondary that are good. Their linebacking core is not terrible. They've got Forsythe Aluakon, who's really good. But with all that being said, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, with all the pieces that they have, are easily a playoff team. Like, not even a question. They're definitely, I think, better than all of the teams that are in this right here. I mean, Is that to say though that one of these teams that are in here couldn't have a really good day and beat them? Yes, I think that's possible. I mean, in fact, the Chargers almost did beat them last year in the playoffs, had not that they had the biggest choke in maybe all of playoff history. So, with that being said, I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are a bona fide playoff team. And part of the reason for that is that they are in the easiest division as well. I mean, they're definitely better than the Texans, they're better than the Colts, and they're better than the Titans. Like they have the easiest division to win, which automatically grants them a playoff spot. And with that, all that being said, I still think that they're better than a lot of other teams in the league. So I can see them not only winning the division, but knocking off a lot of these other teams that are in the NFL. So with all that being said, if things go good for them, they are a bona fide playoff team. And I think that's right where they belong. And yeah, with that being said, guys, we have gotten through all of the teams in the list. Now, I will be honest with you guys, looking over at my recording time, this video has been longer than I thought it was. I'm obviously going to try and cut it down and try to see if I can make it somewhat shorter, but this is something new that I'm bringing to the channel. It's, tiers, obviously, tier list and tier maker. I've decided that the first one's going to be the NFL because I love the NFL. I love football in general. I'm a big Seahawks fan, have been since I was little. I mean, this is just something kind of new that I'm bringing to the channel. I'll probably do more tier lists of other things, probably video games, food, just other things in general. But today for you guys, we did the NFL tier list, and this is kind of where I just have everyone. You guys might disagree, you might agree. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think I, either really messed up or things that you guys really agree with. And I think overall, I like my list here. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense, it's short at the top, short at the bottom, and then you kind of have the thickness, the big chunk in the middle here. Like, I don't think anyone disagrees with the Chiefs being Super Bowl favorites. I don't think anyone agrees with these two teams being Super Bowl contenders. And then going to the bottom, you know, I think my Titans is kind of a hot take. I might be a little bit more harsh on them than a lot of other people would be, but I don't think anyone really agrees with about them being terrible teams, as well as these three being terrible. And then when it comes to, like I said, the chunk in the middle, I think that's where a lot of people have the most debate on whether, where these teams should be. But overall, I'm happy with the list. Let me know what you guys think about the list down below in the comments. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you guys hit that like button. And without further ado, I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.